Welcome from Shanghai. Welcome everybody from wherever you happen to be sitting to the A.Richard Newton Distinguished Innovator Lecture Series, a Berkeley Changemaker course. I'm thrilled that Rishi Modi and I will be moderating with our keynote speaker. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Gurnor, who is a freshman, and he has taken the plunge and not only was willing to introduce, but is so excited to be introducing our keynote speaker tonight. Gurnor, tell us about yourself and introduce our speaker tonight.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Gurnor, and I'm a freshman at UC Berkeley, studying electrical engineering and computer science and business administration. Outside of regular academics, I'm very passionate about entrepreneurship. Actually, I currently run my own social impact startup, and I'm getting my feet wet with technical consulting and blockchain technologies. And so while I was parsing through the list of speakers we had this year for this class, I was particularly interested in hearing from Mr. William Bean because of his vision for improving the global business environment and providing individuals with the tools to do so through the medium of entrepreneurship, which was very exciting for me as an entrepreneur and as a student. And I know I'm very excited to hear from him, and I'm 100% sure that all of you in the audience today are very eager to listen as well. So let me introduce our speaker for today. Mr. William Bean is a global venture capital investor and entrepreneur whose background has been focused on connecting East Asian markets with the rest of the Asian business environment and our global business environment. Mr. Bean has had extensive industry experience as he began his journey at Deutsche Bank and then transitioned into currently working as a general partner for SOSV, while also founding and managing MOX, which is a globally recognized startup accelerator. Through his work, Mr. Bean hopes to continue strengthening the global business environment while empowering startup founders with tools for success. Take it away, Mr. Bean. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, thanks, Gurnor.
Thanks, William. It's really hard to think about you as Mr. Bean. I don't know if anybody knows that reference or not, but look it up at some point. And then actually, I do have a question. Do you, because it is William Bao Bean, do you go by Bao Bean?
No, not really. Just William is fine. I think the funny thing is in Chinese, Bao Bean is actually like a chopped ice dessert. So people think it's pretty funny. But no, William is fine. Thanks.
The chopped ice dessert is interesting. I am putting on the screen here this incredible timeline and all these logos just as we're getting started, because we'll take the next 30 minutes. I'll talk to you a little bit about your early journey. Rishi will kind of talk to you about your current industry and then also go into your thoughts for the future. This is pretty much our flow that we have every week. I think students know this by now. And then when we get to the last 10 minutes of class, we post our feedback code. And that is so that we can give you also direct feedback as soon as possible tomorrow on how things went. So if you look at this timeline, I have to tell you, you should have white hair. I mean, you have done so incredibly much, starting at Bowdoin. And then I know you have an interesting family background, and maybe we'll get into that in a minute. But then going to work in Taiwan, you had said, if those that joined us a little bit later, that you're splitting your time between Shanghai, Taiwan, and Miami. Of course, I can't even imagine what all paperwork you need to have. And after working at the U.S. Department of Commerce, also something that not everybody has done, you went into the track that many aspire to, Bear Stearns, kind of, Deutsche Bank. I mean, that was when Bear Stearns was big, Bank of America, and you did some phenomenal work there, and then went over to work with SoftBank, which everybody has heard of as well, and then founded Innovate, went on, and now you have MOX, the only mobile accelerator. You have Chinaccelerator, Angel Vest. It's just kind of incredible. It's when you see something like that as a student, like me, student always, it's really intimidating. So sometimes it's kind of nice to hear about how things started for you. And you've been kind enough to share all kinds of pictures. And so I think that means you're probably going to share all kinds of stories. So I thought I'd start and maybe you could tell us a little bit about it. So let me start a little bit about something that people might be able to relate to. Yeah, I put this one in there because you are like a Superman. Any thoughts on
No,
this?
no, I
No
think,
comment.
yeah, no, I mean, growing up, my mother used to make all my clothing, pretty old school. Yeah, I mean, the idea of superheroes and superpowers really always kind of appealed. I think it's pretty important to understand what your advantages are. So for Superman, fly, can see through things, and you don't have to be necessarily be good, at everything. But you should definitely understand what your advantages or unfair advantages are in life. And as you go through university or into grad school, you kind of narrow down into the things that you're best at. I quickly found out that I was not going to be a Berkeley engineering student. And so, my superpower is more on the communications and strategy and business development partnerships, trying to figure out where all the puzzle pieces are. So that's it's very important to understand, what you love or as early as possible, and then go that way.
Speaking about what you love, you grew up on the East Coast and you ended up going to school in the Northeast. Here's a picture of Bowdoin. It's a beautiful campus. It looks like it's fall there.
Actually, I think this is my high school. This is Blair.
Oh, you've got to be kidding.
Yeah. No, I grew up about 6 miles away as a day student. This is the Blair Academy in New Jersey. And then I went to Bowdoin, which actually looks very, very similar. So it's easy to confuse the two. But, I wanted to stay a small academic environment where you can have that personal relationship with professors. I think that's super important. And it's our mascot is the polar bear as opposed to the golden bear. It's because, it gets down to 50 below and the sun goes down at before 4 p.m. every day. So I can't imagine how you guys get any work done on the West Coast. But go Bears.
Well, tell us a little bit about, I think this is you. I love this picture. Before they had color. No, I'm kidding. It happens to be black and white, but.
No, I think, I was a residential advisor in high school called a prefect, and, getting the opportunity to do leadership, even in a small way, at a young age, is really, really important. I think for me, for high school, I spent a huge amount of time on academics. In college and at Bowdoin, I spent more time on the social side of things. But growing up, I really kind of threw myself into reading and learning, especially because it's so freezing outside in Maine. And I did not, I did not study math. I did not study engineering. I did not study business. It's traditional liberal arts. And so as a history and government double major, and it's kind of strange that you end up being a deep tech, hard tech VC. But the key important thing is that, during your university years and beyond, you're learning a system of learning. You're learning how to learn. You're learning what, the basic building blocks that can enable you to be able to do, hopefully just about anything. And so it's that system, it's that process where whether you're going to, like, say, a law school and learning a thought process to approach problems, or you're in engineering. So it's very important to get that basic fundamental understanding. But then, what you're learning today in school might not necessarily be something that you use, but a system of learning, something that will stay with you for life. And that's what I've continued to do, try and keep that learning curve going up and to the right. For the last many years since this picture was taken.
So William, I have to say this is kind of unfair because you'd shared a lot of pictures, and so I was just wondering, what is it that you were learning here?
Yeah, so I was trying to figure out where the beer was. I think most everybody were focused on the picture, but I think if you're going to my family just moved back from China to the U.S. and again we're all American, but my daughter commented that it's very strange. People here don't have passports, right? So it's really important to understand that everywhere is not like America, and that people have different approaches to different cultures. And do yourself a favor and try and not just visit, but live outside the U.S. Now I know it's a little difficult now with COVID. But take a study away or a gap year, or take some time to travel and actually live in another country, in another market. So I went. I had to get away from the cold winters. So I went to Taiwan for a semester in Taipei, and that really opened up my eyes to the opportunities outside the U.S. And I've actually now spent 25 odd years in Greater China, and built a career, and we're now global. So I do go back and forth, but our focus is on helping cross borders. Recently it's been really tough to build those bridges to make those borders cross, especially between U.S. and China. But we're still here trying to fight the good fight, and it is important to keep those communication lines open, those bridges open.
You have an incredible history of bridges in your family, and I don't normally go so deep, but you have such a interesting historical background. And I have a couple of photos that I'm hoping people will bear with me to share. I just think that where people come from is fascinating. And if you don't mind, I'm going to share this. I think it's the old one that you had. Let me see if I can find it here and share it. And I think that your grandfather is in it, but I know that you'll talk about it. Just one moment.
Yeah, so in our accelerator, we have something called founder stories. So you tell your life story in a half or 20 minutes in stories. So I shared the deck, and it's a lot of pictures. So yeah, and this is China, I think in the 1920s. The gentleman in the center wearing a suit and tie, Sun Yat-sen. He was the father of the revolution in 1911, where China moved from a dynastic system of government to the republic. And the gentleman on the far right, the short guy, is my great grandfather. And so there's always going to be societal changes, and our family had a little bit to do with some of those major changes over the years. But when revolutions happen, change is something that is the only thing that doesn't change, right? We're going to continue to see massive changes, and we have an opportunity to be a part of those changes, and hopefully to drive positive outcomes. So yeah, it's for me as a history student, some of these stories that was told growing up really drove inspiration for me to actually try and make a difference. And you only get one life, so go for it.
There are all sorts of other fascinating pictures, and if it comes up in the Q&A, I can pull it up later. But I just thought it was knowing where you come from is a pretty interesting thing. As we looked through your timeline, and Bowdoin was fantastic, and then after Bowdoin, you started working in a lot of different areas, including going to Taiwan, and I guess you had done a gap or a year or a semester abroad. Can you talk a little bit about that time where you're figuring out after school what you were doing and what you started to get interested in, kind of your first steps? Because a lot of students here are about to graduate, even in December, like Rishi, or will be soon. And it'd be kind of nice to know with your history background and what you were doing, and how you made your first decisions on what you're going to do.
Yeah, so two pieces of advice here. Try and find mentors, and highly recommend internships. So coming out of Bowdoin, I went back to Taiwan, and my lifelong goal, or my very short lifelong goal at that time, was to work for the U.S. government. So I made a living. I studied some Chinese in the morning, and nights and weekends I taught SAT test prep. to make a living. But the afternoons I worked for free for almost a year at the U.S. Commerce Department, and I'd always wanted to work in the Foreign Service. Well, this 10-month experience cured me of that desire.
Yeah.
Working for the U.S. Commerce Department was extremely interesting, but slow. So I made the transition to investment banking, mostly because there's only 3 ways to get a visa at the time. You can either work for the government, you can work as a teacher, did those 2. And the third is working in an investment bank. So I started off as an English editor, fixing people's equity research reports. An equity research report is a report describing a company for investors. The way I got kind of promoted from English editor, getting paid by the hour, to junior analyst is just because I kept on rewriting all the reports.
Here's an example, I think, of one that you wrote on Palm.
Yeah, so Palm is an amazing company. Imagine like something that looks like this, where it does not connect to the internet. So this is the first device. Now, this company very briefly actually hit the $50 billion price target that we set on it. I was covering very early consumer technology. And we were pumping out these reports, 250 pieces of research a year, helping people, traditional investors that probably barely used a computer, to understand technology. One of the funniest things is we used to have something called a BlackBerry, and it was revolutionary. It was actually a device that you could connect to email wirelessly. Now, all of you have had that. You don't even use email. But this was a real game changer. And as a young tech analyst, I had my opportunity was to explain the opportunity of technology and that change that it would bring to society, to investors, and help them to make investments in these types of companies. Funnily enough, there's I think I don't know whether you guys use Dell computers, but I taught Michael Dell how to use his first kind of like wirelessly connected device, his first BlackBerry, and the key function is be able to scroll down by hitting the space bar. This is before touchscreens, so way back in the day.
Yeah, we have. I think my husband had the old, like, his BlackBerry until fairly recently, frighteningly enough. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. How did you? Well, we'll come back to that later with Michael Dell. You also, when you're working, you IPO'd some huge companies, and I'm wondering if there are any fun stories that you can talk about that, because IPO sounds so sexy and glamorous, and maybe it was.
Yeah, so I think it's important to understand that people around the world, there's different types of technological systems. So I started in the US, and then I went to Asia. One of the companies which I worked on the IPO for was Alibaba, and it was the first IPO. Now Alibaba is I don't know what it is right now, probably a $500 billion company at this point. But back then it was a very different company. Basically, it was almost like a Craigslist or an Angie's List for factories, right? So you had a picture of a factory. Actually, most of the factories didn't have pictures. The way Alibaba made money was by selling a little gold star emoji that would go on the profile of the factory, saying this factory is real. Literally, that was the start of Alibaba, where they would like certify the factory as this factory actually exists. Now the factory could pay extra money for somebody to go visit the factory and take pictures of it to prove that it actually exists. So the internet has the power to make great change, and this really opened up cross-border trade. But it's super basic. And now that company has gone through massive iteration. To the point where they are now, one of the largest financial institutions in the world. They're the largest e-commerce company in the world, and Jack Ma is a pretty incredible figure as one of the wealthier people in the world, and that's because they did not stop with a picture of a factory with a little gold star emoji on it. They went and continued to iterate even down to this very day.
Did you feel like did you have an opportunity to like beat anybody, or like what was your role in it?
So I mean, the the Alibaba business was actually pretty crap, right? I mean, and literally it was like a profile of, and you send a photographer to go do there, and then you put a little gold star on it. My job was to help Jack Ma explain to international investors why this was an attractive business, and then to write about it and talk to investors about it. Now, luckily, I quit before the actual IPO, so I didn't have to do all that explaining, and took the plunge over to the venture capital side. So I did 11 years of investment banking equity research, and it was top ranked. And the funny thing about being top ranked is it gets boring, right? You want to keep that learning curve. So I quit and did something completely different, which was early stage venture capital. And because we were linked with Alibaba, there's a gentleman, Masayoshi Sun-san, gave my colleague on the banking side $50 million to go do a VC, and it was SoftBank China India. It was very revolutionary at the time because nobody thought about regional early stage VC. So I flipped over and started investing. And the challenge is that we'd never done this before. I'd never done this before. I've never run a startup before. So had to learn something new from the start. And so it's almost like a startup. You're at the top of this cliff and you jump, and you don't really have a parachute or a glider or anything. You just have the tools to try and build one on the way down. And we made all sorts of mistakes and failures. I mean, I think we returned cash, but most people don't understand this. But most VCs don't make money, and we were one of those. I think the rule is that in order to become a venture capitalist, you need to lose at least $20 or $30 million. I think I broke even, but just because you're going to fail, doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. So went from being the top of one industry to being basically the bottom of the next industry, but didn't give up. I took a job with a corporate VC, Singapore Telecom, who's a telco carrier in Southeast Asia. So 8 years in, started to finally figure out what's going on. And that's what's landed us here today at SOSV.
I'm going to kind of shift gears a little bit and leave it to Rishi to talk a little bit more about all the learnings from the VC. But we love all the stories and thank you very much. Rishi, take it away.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for thinking about the shift from, working in financial services. Now it's obviously in venture, and would love to learn a bit more about some of those actually key learnings, key mistakes you made. I mean, about the failures. And then also, do you have any mentors to kind of help guide you along the process? I mean, one thing we always hear about venture is that's kind of an apprenticeship model. So love to hear more about that as well.
Yeah, sure. So I think, one of the most important things is relationships. Is one of the key mistakes we made is we had a lot of friends, and they did us favors. They introduced us to deals, and we didn't do any of them, right? So we had the opportunity to invest in a company called JD.com, and the problem with JD.com is they didn't have an economic model. They would take a giant pile of money out every day and basically light it on fire. They were selling, it's an e-commerce company selling at a negative gross margin. Basically, they lost money every single day. And now, they're a huge company now. But we didn't really believe in companies that, spend $1 to make 50 cents. That ended up being a very wrong decision. But we could not move away from our sort of banker model and suspend our belief a little bit, use a little bit of imagination. So when you're doing early stage, when you're investing in cutting edge, bleeding edge, or hard tech, you really gotta have to use your imagination a little bit. The companies that end up changing the world, hopefully for the better, are often the ones that kind of break the rules or don't follow accepted norms. So you kind of have to just squint a little bit and see, hey, not what is this now, but what could it be in the future. So for us right now, another interesting tough experience was just doing things that one's never done before. For me, a lot of people say you have to you have to study, you have to have get an MBA or something like that. I managed to get a job in investment banking, and I didn't actually know accounting. Now the problem is, a couple of weeks into the job, they figured this out. So they said, hey, you got 6 weeks to figure out how to do a financial model, or else you're out of here. There's nothing like pressure. And it turns out accounting is actually not that difficult, and a financial model is pretty easy to figure out, especially when you have massive motivation. So just because you've never done something before, it doesn't mean that you need to go to school for it. You can just actually go figure it out yourself. And one of the things that really helped is some friends were there to explain how models worked. And helped me along the way. Now, the challenge was, when I went to Asia, there weren't really many mentors out there. So instead of having mentors, I kind of flipped over the model and I started mentoring other people. And so I still run an internship and job program, helping students from around the world, from Bowdoin, but also beyond, to get internships and jobs in our organization, but also in the startups that we invested. And so now, getting a bit older, I've got a network of mentors who are actually younger than me, who can help me stay current, understand what's going on, and also help our companies grow and build. So don't think that the mentor needs to have like gray hair. Sometimes it helps. But the mentors are the people around you, which is why it's so important that you not just hang out with your professors, but also look to your friends and your peers.
I mean, without doubt, I mean, the mentorship and network, all these things are just so important, especially by adding value to these startups, right? Especially thinking about how they're trying to scale. And so maybe taking a step back, I'd love to know, especially for many students, all like, startup ideas or things they're working on. What do you generally look for when you're investing in a startup? Is it more the execution, the idea, what percentage, or just any other factors you consider?
Yeah, so I think we invest in something kind of like cockroach entrepreneurs. So doing a startup is quite difficult, because you're doing something that's never been done before, and then you fail, and then you fail again. Hopefully, you're failing quickly. But generally speaking, the ones that succeed are the ones that don't give up. Now, hopefully, you're not doing the same thing over and over again. But what really kind of matters is passion, right? What's going to enable somebody to smash their head against the wall over and over and over again, hopefully in different ways, but trying to figure something out and then not giving up. So we look for passion. The second thing is, we do focus on what is the market like? Is this a problem that can be solved, in the next 10 years or in the next 8 years? We're a long-term fund, 10 plus 3 years. So we invest at the very early stage. But I went into Vietnam in 2007, 2008. Now 10 years later, 12 years later, it's actually a pretty great market. But we were over 10 years too early. So we look at the challenge, and is this something that with technology's help can be sort of solved for or worked on in the next decade? Because if it's beyond that, we're probably going to end up losing a lot of money. And in order to be able to continue doing what we're doing, we still need to actually drive a profit. Yeah.
And I mean, even thinking about cross borders as well. I mean, how does investing differ? I mean, in terms of working with Chinese entrepreneurs there versus American Silicon Valley. It's a very global ecosystem. So love to kind of hear that thoughts as well.
I'd say just sort of backing up, the consumer internet is in the U.S. and I'm gonna try and use an analogy here, see how this goes. But if you're using Instagram, you're basically you're in Facebook's world. So it's a little bit like a zoo. Okay, Instagram's like a zoo, and all of you are the zoo animals. Okay, and Instagram and Facebook is the zookeeper, and you're all in there, and you're in your cages. And what Instagram does is they charge people, brands and companies, in order to enter the zoo and play with the animals. you being the animals. And so the way they make money is building a fence around the zoo and charging money to brands to feed the animals. Okay, so that's sort of the Western internet model. It's a media-based model. In the East, in China, you've got companies like Tencent or Alibaba. They have a different model. They have an open area, relatively open area, and anybody can build their own zoo. And you're still the zoo animals. Anybody can build their own zoo. But in order to engage, you have to use the zookeeper's tokens, the zookeeper's money, the zookeeper's currency. And then the zookeeper takes a cut of every transaction. They take a revenue share. And this is why companies like Tencent and Alibaba are among the biggest financial services companies in the world, because they're taking a cut of every transaction that happens. But you're still kind of like in that zoo. Now, the problem with these zoos is you have a company like Google, who's, in my view, pretty ethically challenged. So their zoo is like an Android phone. Now, most of the people around the world, they are low income. They're using a $50 or $60 Android phone. Now, Google got into trouble in Europe because they require the phone makers to put the entire Google software package into the phone, and that's 750 megabytes. You might think that's pretty small, but 750 meg in a $50 phone is huge, because there's the entire memory of that phone is 1 gig. And now Europe sued Google, and Google had to pay a major fine. Okay. And so, Google is now no longer allowed to force everybody to put the entire 750 meg in. But that is not actually the case in Asia. And actually, Google said, hey, you have to still put this full 750 meg in. What this means is that the entire phone's memory is taken up by the Google package, and people cannot download other apps and other services. And so Google's a zookeeper. And people all around the world, they cannot access anything other than Google services. So hopefully what we're trying to do with our Mox ecosystem, what we're investing in is the ability for entrepreneurs to all create their own zoos and then share. So their own apps and services. And our companies are cross-promoting each other on a trust-based system. So we'll see. We want to kind of let the animals out of the zoo. And now you can make lots of money working for the zoo. You have the opportunity to all go get jobs at Google, and the zookeeper does pay lots of money. But do you want to spend your life working for a system that forces only one version of the zoo, only one version of the internet, or do you want to spend your life, making sure that everybody can build their own zoo, build their own apps, build their own services? And so, we've got, Dan Chao is working on our team. He's a Berkeley engineering grad, and he could make a ton more money working for a Google or Facebook or Ollie or a Tencent. But he's working with us, helping these entrepreneurs, basically build their own zoo. And for our ecosystem, making it possible for young startups who build things that are really world changing, to have that opportunity to get out into the world. Because for somebody in India, they only see one version of the internet, and that's the Google version or the Facebook version.
I think it's amazing how we think about these different zoos, but also think about just like kind of different industry verticals. It's almost kind of tying into like sort of creator economy, right? Where people can start building their own tools and building their own platforms. So lots of new industry trends are kind of going forward. Really excited to see where things are moving. And maybe in terms of your perspective, let's kind of hear like, where do you see, your experience in telecom, obviously consumer internet, where do you see these areas of interest or other areas in the next 10 years beyond? Like, I guess, what are you kind of interested in and where are these trends going?
Yeah, so I think our tagline is the next 4 billion. So, the US, you're very familiar with the market, but what we're really focused on is how can technology change people's lives who don't have a lot of money, right? So we're focused on Southeast Asia, India, Indonesia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, we're in Malaysia. We're also in countries like South Korea and Taipei and China. But we're now moving into Africa. So think about in Africa, you've got people. Now they might have a smartphone or they might have a high-end feature phone, but they're spending 60% of their income on food. Now as college students, you're probably spending 60% of your income on food, but it's a little bit different for Africa. Just getting access is difficult. So we're investing in companies that can help use technology to make people's lives easier, to get access to more and better food and goods, and also do it a lot more efficiently. So we have a company called, for example, Market Force, and they work with small mom and pop shops, those little corner stores where you go and buy your staples, your rice, your lentils, or your potato chips or whatever, and enable them to get some financing. Also enable them to offer more than just one type of rice, more than just one type of coffee, more than just one type of detergent through financing. So we're really looking at how technology can change these what we would traditionally call emerging markets or developing markets, what we call now mobile-only markets, where people's only access to the internet is on their smartphone. The second area we're really focused on is climate tech. We're the most active seed and early stage investor in the world, doing about 140 investments a year, and 15% of those investments are really focused on companies that reduce carbon. We just published our Climate Tech 100, which is the top 100 of those companies. I'll give you a couple examples that are kind of fun. So we've got a robot that goes around those huge container ships, the big ship that got stuck in the canal, these massive container ships. They only clean them every like 3 or 4 years because they're huge and it's expensive to clean them. So we invested in a company that has a little robot that goes around and eats the barnacles, scrapes the barnacles off of the ship using AI machine vision and a little scraper, right? Now, this might not seem like that important, but when you think about the amount of oil spent on shipping things around this planet, if the barnacles are off the ship in real time, as opposed to just once every 4 years, the ships use a significantly lower amount of fuel, right? And they also move faster. So it's good for the company, but it's also good for the environment. And so we have, the ability to invest in companies like these. We're also the most active investor through our IndieBio platform, which is over here behind me, IndieBio. It's in San Francisco. Go check it out. We're south of Market. And what we do is we're one of the most active investors, or the most active investor in biotech and synthetic biology. So think beef without the cow, milk without the cow. We have ice cream without the cow. We have duck without the duck, chicken without the chicken. Lots of companies like Perfect Day and Notco, where you can go find the milk without the cow in Whole Foods today. So it's a little bit different than Impossible or Beyond, which are more like veggie burgers. Ours are real meat, cultured meat, grown in bioreactors. And the key thing is that it takes 35 calories of grain to create 1 calorie of beef protein, right? And that's a huge amount of water. It's pesticides. It's also hormones and antibiotics. For ours, it's usually about 3 to 5 calories of grain to create 1 calorie of meat protein. So it's a 10x improvement, and hopefully it'll taste pretty good. Right now, it's a little too expensive, but we'll hope to see products from companies like Upside and Finless in the market soon.
Any chance have you heard of the Berkeley Alternative Meat Lab at all, or?
Yeah. I mean, I'm the internet software guy, but definitely. Mm-hmm. One of our team members was the Berkeley BioWorks. I think they started that up. So go check out IndieBio and check out our Climate Tech Summit, which is coming up pretty shortly. I think we've got some amazing speakers doing some really cutting edge, bleeding edge things in bio. If you don't want to end up working for the big zookeeper like a Google or Facebook, definitely check out our job board. There's lots of internships and opportunities to work with some amazing startups that are changing the world for the better.
I mean, without doubt, there's so many amazing startups, in sort of emerging tech space as well as kind of emerging markets. But maybe just one thing to help clarify for the rest of the body, just like kind of what's the difference between an early stage, a seed investor, and then obviously thinking about kind of growth equity investors. It's kind of helpful to kind of clarify some of their investment approaches, and I guess what's the role of an investor in each of them?
Yeah, so I mean, early stage is a bit different because you're working with entrepreneurs, and many of them are straight PhDs, straight out of academia, but they might not be young, but the company is very, very young, and we're looking to find something called sort of product market fit. So you have science, but how do you take science and turn that into a product, and then help that product turn into a company? We can help on the science side, but we also help give these PhDs and students a framework in which they can be really productive in making this transition from academia to entrepreneurship. It's not easy. I mean, if you're constantly failing all the time and you don't have a support structure, it's hard, which is why we do things in programs in batches where the entrepreneurs are all together and getting support from each other, which is very important, peer support from us, the people in our SOSV team. But we have mentors. We have over 900 mentors, which are industry experts that we pull in, almost like professors or like teaching assistants to come in and give that guidance and give that support. We also have like the basic things like mental support because it's psychologically draining to just constantly fail. I mean, one of the things that you learn as you go through is that it's resilience is probably more important sometimes than just pure traditional ability to take a test or something. The ability to not give up. So what we try and do is give that framework, give that foundation, and give the support to help people try and solve the problems that they're solving. And we believe these are super important problems, especially around areas like climate. So in terms of investing, we're really early stage. What's oftentimes most important is actually not the money. Of course, you need money in order to eat and sleep, but it's really helping turn that science into something that can actually solve a problem scalably and repeatably. So a startup is not a company. A startup is something an idea looking to be scalable and repeatable. Once something is working, something that can probably scale and repeat, that's a company. And in companies, you can just do it over and over and over again and make lots of money. And that's where kind of like PE or later stage investors come in, because they're investing in companies and they're providing capital to drive scale. And so it's a very, very different type of investment. So PE is basically a lot of spreadsheets, financial models, and legal documents where we're kind of in there in the dirt side by side with the entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, you made a switch towards the early stage venture when you think about skill sets and financial models. I mean, investment banking goes right into growth equity. It's kind of interesting for the parallel there. And then early stage, you're kind of getting to the weeds, getting to the grit of things.
Yeah, I mean, my career path is really strange. Almost no one goes from investment banking into early stage venture, and if they do, they don't succeed. And in fact, I didn't really succeed. My first 4 years of venture was probably a pretty big disaster. But no, I didn't give up, right? And kept on going. I took a corporate job, corporate VC, but still a corporate job where there was no upside really, and kept on learning. So it's you have to eat your own dog food, right? You have to not give up when you fail. I had offers to go back and run media and internet for Asia for Goldman Sachs, and I walked out of the interview halfway through the second interview because I was like, hey, I don't want to waste your time. I'm not going to take this job. I don't really feel like going back and doing something I've already done before. So I think you all have an opportunity to drive your life, and so hopefully you can not just follow like the straight path. Get off the road, get into the bushes, get into the weeds, take some risk, because in the end, you can always just go get a job at the zookeepers, right? But you only have one life to live, so live it hard.
And it could have been better said, perseverance and just keep that sort of learning mindset. We're always students and crafting your own path. These are some really great takeaways. And kind of one last question, I see we have a bunch of students kind of lined up here, is just, what are you doing now outside your time at Venture? What are you learning outside the sort of this ecosystem in itself there? I mean, what do you kind of do to help keep yourself balanced?
Yeah, so I think there's the balance. Yeah, there's no balance. So there's like family, sleep, work, friends, and exercise. And then startup, you pick three. I'm basically down to two. So I work and then I try and spend time with my family. So I think the way I would look at it is when you get up in the morning, and this is for everybody, think about, what are the things that you're going to do in the day that you look forward to, and the things that you look forward, in the day that you do not look forward to, and what percentage of the time are you spending on things that you look forward to, things that make you happy, things that you enjoy. I'm not talking about video games here, but things outside of entertainment. And so for me, I've worked extremely hard to be able to increase that percentage. And I have to say that like right now, I'm extremely lucky because I spend 100% of my time doing things that I look forward to. Now, I took a 75% pay cut 12 years ago, and I just broke even on all the debt I had to go into in order to do venture capital. We didn't take a vacation for 5 years. That was a little bit difficult. But I think that going for it, it was very risky. But I could always go, work for an investment bank again and go work for the zookeeper again if I actually needed to buy food. So take that risk. But yeah, no balance. I'd say a lot of the mentors in our program are my friends, so try and sneak some social in there. And then I spend a huge amount of time on the phone, usually like 12 to 14 hours in meetings a day. And I usually walk when I'm doing that, so I try and get my 10 to 15,000 steps. I think tonight we're doing a 5K fun run to a bar somewhere. So try and keep it somewhat balanced. But really, you have to think about what's important to you and what you're willing to give up to get it. And for me, what we're doing with Mox and Chinaccelerator, where we're helping startups literally change the structure of the internet market, where we're disaggregating, cutting out Google and Facebook, where our companies are just partnering together. And instead of having to pay money to the zookeeper for ads, right? Pay for advertising in order to get access to the consumer. Our companies are actually just bartering. They're just our companies are promoting each other in return for revenue share. So it's an ecosystem for startups built on supporting each other, promoting each other for free in return for revenue share. Now, 4 years, we only had 6 million users, which in Asia is nothing. And this ecosystem of startups like who are just promoting each other is finally starting to take off. 4 years, so mid 2019, we had like 6 million users. Now our Mox ecosystem, end of last year, hit 50 million monthly actors. This June, now we're 93 million monthly active users. This is all with no advertising fees, and this is a new kind of a way of doing things. I guess if we're going back to the zoo analogy, we're allowing everybody to create their own zoos and then share. So it's an economy not based on trust, it's based on trust, not on money, not on advertising, not on taking a toll or we're basically trying to break down the walls of and really open things up. So we'll see how it goes. Over the next 10 years, hopefully we can build an internet that's open to everybody.
I mean, they're all talking about Web 3.0, so very ambitious, very exciting. We'll see kind of how things obviously turn out next few years and beyond. And so I guess, Vicky, I think we're ready for some student questions. I see Mick is up there, so I can ask you to speak. Here you go.
Yeah, Mick. So William, I'll let you get a drink of water. We have a lot of questions lined up. We'll see how many we are able to get through. Thank you for this. I did want to make one quick note. I am so happy to be speaking with you, but if it weren't for our Berkeley students, it wouldn't have happened, because Kyle Yang, who I think is listening and he's walking between classes, because I think he was working with you and then moved back to the East Coast to go to school, graduate school. He was so adamant after taking the Newton series. He was like, I have someone I really want to come and speak. And so I do a call out to Kyle and thank him. Thank you for making this happen, William, and remind students that could be you. So Mick, go ahead with your question.
Yes, hello. Thank you for taking your time to give us a lot of valuable insight. My question is about the implementation of the digital currency that's currently going on in China. In some cities, it's already been implemented. So what is happening is really that they are trying to implement a digital currency to replace the actual currency, the M0 currency, as we call it. And this will have quite some implications in terms of how money is being transferred. It would basically be a central bank-backed digital currency in the sense that it's centralized, right? So currency is being centralized through the government, which is quite different than what we've seen in a lot of other places in the world. And my question to you is, what influence do you think this will have in the startup world in China?
Yeah, so I'd say you have Tencent and Alibaba, a duopoly, and the tech crackdown in China is more like antitrust, anti-monopoly action, because you had two zookeepers, right? You have Tencent and you have Alibaba. So Alibaba's got the Tenpay and Tencent side, and Alibaba's got Alibaba and Financial, and they were basically like the zookeepers, and the government here said, no, we're the zookeeper. Okay, so and so they don't want Alibaba and Tencent to basically control the monetary system, and so they brought it up, and so yes, it is digital. It is you could say it's crypto, but it's not decentralized. It's completely 100% centralized. So there really is no difference between it and kind of traditional money, because China. I mean, China started off mobile wallet usage used to be 50 times larger than the US. Then 2 years ago, it's like 20 times larger than the US. Everybody here is already using digital wallets. There's already no cash here. China's far ahead of the US in terms of adoption of digital currency and digital payment. Like nobody carries a wallet here. I mean, I still have a wallet because like I'm old and it's a habit. The key thing is to have a phone. Actually, I have two phones just in case. The biggest problem that you can have in China is not having battery, right? So if you run out of battery, you can't buy anything. You can't get a car. You can't eat. And so, but what are the implications for startups? I don't think there really are any, other than the fact that the digital payment will not be controlled just by Ali and Tencent anymore. There will be a more open kind of like government-backed digital currency that everybody can use. So you're seeing anti-monopoly or anti-duopoly action here. And this is one effort by the government to actually kind of open things up. The problem with not having competition in China and only having two major players like Ali and Tencent is that you don't see as much innovation in China as you used to, because there wasn't that competition. I'll give you an example, like JD.com, the company that we could have invested in, but unfortunately didn't. They just had a great quarter. They're an e-commerce platform. Because for the kind of like the first time, they can actually partner with Starbucks, right? So before, Starbucks is like Ali, Tencent, but there's like if you're working with the big guys, you can't work with a company like JD. Now these big brands can work with everybody, and it's really opening things up. So from that standpoint, it should be a positive for startups, that things will be more open and not Ali camp and Tencent camp. Hopefully that helps. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Oren, you had two questions, but I've asked you just to ask one, if that's all right.
Sure. Hi, William, and thanks a lot for this very great insights. I was curious about getting more insights from you as somebody doing business across borders about China's dynamics. And so I had two questions. Maybe you can choose. It's one of them was on China-US relations and its implications, and the other was on China's views on capitalism with the recent shift on private education. So I don't know, maybe they're both things.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll probably go more for the second one. So China is probably one of the most capitalist economic systems in the world, in that it's pretty much winner take all, at least until recently. People think when they think China, they might think socialism or communism, but China's pretty pure capitalist. And what happened was that the big got so big because there wasn't regulation stopping monopolies from forming, that you had basically two companies, all the intents and controlling everything. And so what we're seeing now is antitrust action, basically anti-monopoly, similar to what happened in Europe and to some extent the US, where the government's actually trying to increase competition. Now, education, the crackdown on online education and tutors, that's a different thing. That's a societal issue. The university system has a Gaokao exam system. It's purely numerical. So you take a test and only the top people can go to university. And what's happened in China is that rich people can spend lots of money on tutors and their kids can actually place better in the test, whereas poor people who can't afford the tutors don't place as well. And you've got rich people taking over the university spots and poor people not being able to attend. This has the potential to create societal instability, which no one really wants here on the government side, because that would be difficult for them. So what they're doing is like they're trying to legislate or trying to regulate a level playing field where people who have money don't take over the educational system. We'll see how this goes. I think there's lots of people, say in the U.S., that want to have something similar. The way it happens here in China is obviously much different than in the U.S. And hopefully that answers your question. Thanks.
So it's not a shift from capitalism, it's just a shift towards adding more competition and meritocracy, let's say, to capitalism.
Capitalist system and adding more regulation to make it more competitive. Because if you take capitalism to an extreme, like China did, there's actually less competition over time. It's kind of like a winner take all, and you had two companies controlling the entire economy.
Maureen, thanks for your question. Joey, I hope you're okay. I feel like this is lightning round for you, and I appreciate your everything, William. So feel free to take a drink of water in between, and Joey's gonna or not
find something.
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
That's at least 10 steps right there. There you go.
Yeah. So Joey, go ahead there. Or sure. I can still hear all you guys.
Gotcha. Thanks a lot for the time. I'm curious if you think that the recent influx of alternative VC and alternative investors is going to change the future of VC, or if you view it as more of a temporary influx. Like recently, we've seen that a lot of early stage startup deals have ballooned in valuation, early stage companies. And so I'm curious if you think that's something systemic or temporary.
I think, I suppose the challenge is that traditionally, investing was the purview of, I don't know, sort of like the elite. So the number of people who could invest, initially in stocks was low. The number of people who could invest in private equity was, just the top 1% or the top 2%, right? And now you're seeing technology opening up investing. You've seen some regulatory changes that allowed kind of like normal people to start investing in angel and VC. And what's happened is that there's a lot of money chasing, few entrepreneurs. So most people think that there's like many startups and few VCs. What the actuality is there's many VCs, there's lots and lots of money and very few good startups, right? The number of good startups doesn't actually change over time. So you do get kind of like a bubble action where there's like money flooding in and everybody gets funded. The good startups and the bad startups get funded. Now, most engineering talent can't tell the difference between a good startup and a bad startup. You get a bit of a bubble, and then most of those companies go out of business, and then you get a kind of a return where people who got burned basically leave the market. I think what we're seeing now is just there's so much capital chasing these opportunities that it's bubble, lots and lots of bubbles. And you've seen a real shift from public market to private market. So I don't see the valuations, I don't see things like popping anytime soon, just because there's so much capital flooding in now that private investing is a lot more open than it used to be. But people are going to lose a lot of money. I mean, it's most VCs, actually don't make profit, right? Now, as a asset class, VC is better than many other asset classes, but individually, it's pretty tough to make money as an angel investor or as an early stage investor. Our model is to invest in many companies, 140 companies a year, and then we live with them. So think about it a little bit like dating. Right, most early stage investor, they kind of date, and everybody's on their best behavior, I hope, and then bang, they get married, right? And they write a big check, and then they go on the board, and off they go. What we do is we do the dating thing, but then we put in a $150,000 check, and we kind of like, I don't know, we get engaged, right? Here's your engagement present, and then we move in together. And once you move in with somebody, you have a very different understanding of who they are and how they operate, right? And here's where the analogy kind of breaks down. We get married to the top third, right, or the top 40%. The model's working so well that actually, over 70% of our companies are getting funded post our program or going profitable. But that this is a systematic, process-based, data-driven approach to early stage investing, and it's so far it's working quite well. But there is a flood of money coming in, and the world's always getting more competitive. We tried to VCs invest in innovation, but there hasn't really been that much innovation in VC. YC innovated. A16Z is innovated by providing services. We're innovating because we have biotech labs in our offices, and we have a manufacturing lines in our hacks operations in Shenzhen, and now we're opening up in New Jersey. But again, the world's getting more and more competitive. Thanks, Joey.
Thank you.
So, William, are you opening up in New Jersey because of being from New Jersey?
No, it's the hacks people. So, I think we do partner with governments, and the New Jersey state has been amazing. They put up a $25 million grant to open up Hacks USA in New Jersey. It was a competitive situation between multiple states. It's a $50 million program to bring, smart, climate, health, and robotics to build and help entrepreneurs across the U.S. And the world to base and focus in the U.S. Similar to our IndieBio New York, which used to be IndieBio London. We got a $25 million grant from New York State to move to New York State. And so we're really happy with our public partnerships. We think that government support's really, really important, especially in this deep tech, hard tech. It's really hard to do an accelerator for therapeutics. It's extremely expensive. So being able to offer $2.5 million in accelerator investing to a therapeutics, a drug company, drug startup is fun. I'll give you an example. Like right now, there's big problem with bees, right? Bumblebees, they get kind of whacked by pesticides or whatever, and they get kind of drunk, and then they as you do, have difficult finding their way home back to their dorm room, right? What we're doing is we have a little vaccine for bees that makes it so that they are immune to the pesticides, and that came out of IndieBio, New York. And it's like a really, really cool company that will allow us to hopefully save agriculture from, because without bees, you don't have pollination. Without pollination, we don't have food. So really cool stuff.
That is really cool. That's fantastic. Gurnor, you have a question too.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for your time. I wanted to ask more on, I noticed, that you've been recently working in the, cryptocurrency exchange space as well, I believe.
Yep.
And so I wanted to ask that we've seen blockchain technologies kind of proliferate across all industries so far. But since you also run a startup accelerator in that sense, what do you think is the role of blockchain technologies as a tool to spur creator startup growth in the future?
Yeah. So I started investing in blockchain and crypto in 2015, pretty early, like 2017, 18. I think TechCrunch, Crunchbase named us the number 3 most active traditional VC in blockchain. The technology has the ability to, bring transparency, security, and trust, right? And one of the challenges, and I don't know, maybe I should dump the zoo analogy, but when you have the centralized zookeeper controlling everything and keeping all the consumers in little cages and then charging admission to people in the form of advertising fees to go hit the little animals in the zoo. What blockchain and crypto has the opportunity is breaking all the walls down and allowing everybody to set up their own zoos and really opening things up. So we invested in a company called BitMEX, which used to be the #1 crypto derivatives exchange in the world. Now we're number 12. We just paid $100 million, or they just paid $100 million fine to the U.S. government for bad KYC. But the reason why we invested in them is that theoretically, on a $50 smartphone, someone could buy an S&P 500 derivative, index fund derivative, for just $5 worth. So Warren Buffett always says, S&P 500 index funds are like the best investment over the long term. 15, 16% annualized return, much better than VC funds. So we were investing in that company to open up the ability for a farmer in Nairobi or in the outskirts of Nairobi, it's a big city, to be able to put $5 in the S&P 500 without having a stock account, without even having a bank account. Now, unfortunately, we actually launched that product. The company launched that product, and nobody really cared. What they really wanted to do was speculate using unlimited trading volume and 100x leverage, and basically, there's a kind of like a slot machine. But that's where the market took it. That's not necessarily why we invested in the company in the first place. The bottom line here, though, is that technology has the power to break down walls, to break down these barriers, to let the animals out of their zoo cages. And so we're particularly bullish on the blockchain space as a technology to drive change. We've also recently done, an investment in the metaverse space called Superworld app. Go check it out. It's hopefully will be the art gallery of the world. When we turn the world into an art gallery. My father is an inspiration for me, and he's an artist who made a living as an artist. Is very rare in the world because most artists cannot make a living through their art. And we hope that creators will be able to make a living through their creations by being able to sell them. And we want people to be able to enjoy them in this metaverse. So I jumped around a little bit there, but check out Superworld app. And we're very, very positive on blockchain and cryptos. Technology is a power to drive change in the world.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question. I think we will try to take 2 more questions. We may have a little bit more time, but Toshko, you had a question that I think was kind of upvoted. If you wouldn't mind going.
Yeah. So my question is basically, when you're looking at these really early stage startups, what things do you look at to determine really far whether this is actually going to be a successful company, and especially when you compare them to other startups with the same idea? And then what do you do as a VC, if anything, to steer them in that right direction?
Sure. So think about for your personal life as well, or your personal career trajectory. We call it unfair advantage. So what are the things that this team or this project or this idea, what can they do better than anybody else? Like, do they have an unfair advantage? And especially when you're going cross-border into the most competitive market in the world, China, you need to have an unfair advantage because everybody else has the advantages of local market understanding. They have more capital or access to capital. They have more connections. So you really need to have, as an entrepreneur, some sort of unfair advantage. Now, that could be a unique approach. That could be technology driven. It could be from the experience of the founders and their real understanding of the challenge of the industry. So that's, the easiest way to look at it is what is the unfair advantage, and is it really unfair?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
That's great. I had said I'm going to post our passcode so you'll see it on the screen while Idian asks their question, if that's all right, Idian?
Yeah, sorry. I had a pretty simple question. What's your plans for the rest of the day? I was just curious.
Oh, I thought you meant the rest of his life.
Oh yeah, the rest of life
Yeah,
works
yeah.
too, but I'm just like curious about the now.
Yeah, I've got meetings until for the next 12 hours.
That sounds riveting.
A lot. It's actually, it's not that bad. So basically, one of the challenges with having 178 active portfolio companies is really important to spend time with them and to help. Now, most VCs, they just show up once a quarter and scream. And what we try and do, because I have a team of 35 full time, is we're trying to work with the company pretty consistently over time. And so we started off as an accelerator, and that's a 3-month program. Then we extended to 6-month program. Now we're not an accelerator anymore because our program lasts forever. One of the challenges with having a program that lasts forever is it is a challenge to actually provide value add consistently forever for 178 companies. So I spend a lot of time working, basically talking to the companies. And I have a pretty interesting view of the world because I'm getting real-time data from 178 companies spread all over the world on what's going on. But it doesn't really leave much time for much else. So that's how I'm going to spend the rest of my day, talking to people and hopefully adding some value.
Right on. Thank you.
William, a lot of people have been asking or interested if they want to come work with you. What's the way to get noticed and become an intern?
I don't know, talk to Kyle. So I think Kyle Yang's on here somewhere, but no, we just signed up for some sort of job board called Consider, but I don't know how it works. If you go to Chinaccelerator.com, we have a job board in there. You can, LinkedIn's a little bit difficult for me because apparently I somehow hit this like friend limit. But hit me up on LinkedIn and send me a message or something there, and just identify yourself as from this event, and I'll give you an email address for my colleague Maggie, who helps coordinate the job and internship program. But yeah, we have opportunities, especially remote all around the world. But for biotech and hardware, the main focus is the US. So lots of fun stuff, especially in the Bay Area.
So what is it that you talk to so many people, you're on the phone for 12 hours, you've met so many people, and you are this person who can take fairly complex ideas and make it comprehensible so that people want to invest in it. what do you look for in somebody else? Who do you want to work with? What kind of traits do they have?
Yeah, so in startup, there's basically you have people who do product, and then you have people who do tech, and then you have marketing, sales, sort of like a shit talker. So I am the sort of the shit talker, and then my colleagues, we have a good balance because they're more like product and they're more like tech, and together we actually form something that's functional. If you have just tech, but no product and no sales, difficult. If you have product but no tech and no sales, difficult. And if you just have somebody who talks like me, then nothing happens. So we look for a balance. We invest in companies with co-founders, and it's very difficult to do things alone. Maybe if you're Elon Musk, you can like do everything, but most of the world is not Elon Musk, thank goodness. But yeah, we look for a balance and people who can, work in a team with at least one other person.
I appreciate your balance. I had all sorts of other photos and stuff, and I know we have a few more questions. I am conscious of your time. It is 6:26 our time. We've got about 4 more minutes. Are you okay to go?
Yep.
Then go ahead. I think Bjorn, are you still with us? Do you want to ask your question? Or Bjorn isn't. Kyle, do you want to ask anything?
I just want to ask the question on behalf of all the students here. What would be your biggest suggestion if, a student, an undergrad from Cal wants to be a venture capitalist in the future or entrepreneur?
Yeah, I would say, the challenge with being a venture capitalist, I was a very, very bad CEO. I did 2 startups on the side secretly when I was at SoftBank, and I was a really bad CEO. So the second startup actually did much better because my co-founder, she was a CEO, and I just did the sales part and the BD part. And we had fun. We launched and ran Vice Media in China, 2010 to 2012. So that was an interesting experience for another day. But I would say have a understanding of what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you have a passion for, and what you don't. And then usually the easiest way to become a venture capitalist is to do a startup, make lots of money, and then not have to make a living, because venture capital is a very, very poor way to make a living. It took me 10, 11 years to break even. And maybe I'm just slow, but we invest in companies that take a long time to get to where they're going, right? Facebook from first angel investment to exit was, I think, 12 years. So VCs, if you're trying to make a living or want to get rich, don't do a VC, be an entrepreneur. In terms of entrepreneur, do your own startup. I also suggest working on other people's startups because it's more interesting or maybe a little bit less crazy to work in somebody else's startups and watch them make all the mistakes as opposed to trying to learn them all yourself. So think about try and go for early stage. So once a startup gets pretty big, then you can't see everything. But when you get into a company that's relatively small, then you have the opportunity to do many, many things and to get exposure to all the craziness and chaos that will happen. And so think about interning in multiple startups. Of course, you can choose one, but try interning in multiple startups, not too big. And see who their angel investors are, see who their backers are. You can kind of scrub through the startups, but you want to work in a good startup and see the growth and path and trajectory. You will learn a lot for a company, a startup that dies, but try and pick startups to intern for where they've got some people who've been there, people who've done that, and who's got a good network of angel investors backing them. And again, not too big, 10, 20 person startup. You'll get a lot more interesting experience than a 50. Thanks. Thanks, Kyle. Thanks for introducing me here, by the way. Thanks.
That's great. Actually, Manraj has an interesting question, like going from the little to the bigger question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, William, thanks so much for putting in the time. It has been really insightful. I actually think we have a mutual connection. Ali Madavji of Blockchain Founders Fund, who's actually a mentor for SOSV as well.
He actually used to sit over here in our office.
Oh, wow. So I actually worked for BFF in Singapore over the summer, as well as Malaysia over the summer. So I sort of got
Tobias, right? Or
Tobias, yeah.
Tobias Bauer, he was an intern here as well. Yep.
Awesome. So I sort of switched between Kuala Lumpur and Singapore and the dynamics of Southeast Asia. And it was really interesting to me to see, the huge contrast between Singapore's maturity and Kuala Lumpur's upcoming scene, and how all of this is actually quite related to relations with China as well, right? With China obviously having a lot more resources within the startup ecosystem. I was just curious on your take. How do you see Malaysia or other Southeast Asian countries coming up in the next 5-10 years? How does the relationship look like with China?
Yeah, so I think there's the amount. There's three things here. One is the amount of Chinese capital going into Southeast Asia is pretty large. It was huge, and it is still quite significant. China's number 2 VC market in the world in terms of capital deployed after the US, and sometimes on certain quarters it exceeds the US. And that capital, a lot of the investment from China used to go to the US. That's not happening now. And then it started to go to India, but that's not happening now either, or not as much as before. Tencent still putting about 700 million into Indian companies this year. But so you're seeing a lot of funding coming down. The second trend that's quite important is SPACs. So the challenge for Southeast Asian internet companies is that they couldn't get public because U.S. institutional investors, the big funds, couldn't get their heads around SoutheastSia. Southeast Asia is not one place; it's many places. And if you look at Indonesia, it's not just one country; it's like many countries, giant archipelago, right? It's very different from Jakarta to the rest of the country, so companies just couldn't get IPO, right? But SPACs changed that, and so once you have an exit, then it attracts capital. So a lot of the big funds from around the world are looking at the returns and the growth. They're getting comfortable very quickly with it, and they're coming in. So it's actually not just China capital, but now it's really global capital coming in. And then the third trend is just growth rates are big. These are emerging, developing, but now skyrocketing markets where internet and tech is really changing the market significantly, changing people's lives. You're getting more and more people who are not on the internet now on the internet, and digital payment is breaking down a lot of barriers. So things like fintech is taking off. So these markets are taking off. And when we just started investing in Pakistan about a year and a half ago, last year, total investment into Pakistan last year was 120 million. In the Q1 of this year, just for the quarter, was 120 million or something like that. And then so far this year, I think we're up around, I don't know, $500 million. Now that might not seem like a lot, but considering where we were before, it's huge. So I think that type of capital inflow and the ability for people to see a path to exit, married with the growth in the market, is really driving a change. So quite bullish on opportunities in Southeast Asia. We're the number 5 most active VC in Asia, number 7 in Southeast Asia. So really active.
William,
awesome.
On behalf,
thank you
very much for that question. And on behalf of Rishi and myself, I want to thank you for spending this time with 450 plus of us. We've enjoyed it. It's been a pleasure, and can't wait to see you maybe in California on one of those trips.
Yeah, love it. Really appreciate it. And thanks so much, Victoria and Rishi, and especially Kyle. Thank you so much.